Hey everybody, Andy Hamilton from Track Wrestling here, joined by Coach Dan Gable. We're winding down the Dynasty Duels. Four Gable coached Iowa teams are in the Dynasty Duels semifinal, so we're bringing you guys the best source to talk about those four teams. Coach, welcome in. Thanks for taking the time.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Well, you guys reeled off 9 straight titles leading up to 1987. The last one in that run of 9 consecutive was 1986. Then you go through 4 seasons without a championship before you put together a high-powered 91-92 team. And then you start a run of 6 straight titles in 7 years to finish your career. You know, looking back, when did you guys maybe get off course a little bit? When could you sense that maybe things were off course just a little bit from the apex of that run in the 1980s? And then what were important factors in getting things back on track with that team in 91, 92, and beyond?
All right, one step at a time here. You know, you don't know that you're exactly off track until you get off track. When you're winning that much, it's hard to believe you're not going to win. Especially when you look at the lineup and you look at kind of how you've been doing. So it really took till the 87 Nationals to actually get beat. Actually, let me back it up a little bit. I believe it was probably in December of that year for the Nationals in March where I got, whoa, I don't think we're on track for that 10th championship. And, I wouldn't have really told you that we weren't on track, which we are on track wrestling right now. But anyway, I wouldn't have told you except, something happened. But then I lost in a dual meet, and then all of a sudden I start thinking, and I start looking, and you start becoming more real. You're able to not just blow everything off, and you can actually sit down and start looking and deciphering and going back in time, and we're winning or having success, but are there mistakes being made? You should be doing that anyway, but when you're winning that much, you may have a tendency not to. And you may not have a tendency to, even though people call you up and say, wow, you guys are great and everything, but, you had one of your kids was downtown last night, or a couple kids were here and there, and they weren't acting that good, or so on and so forth. And I just kind of, maybe address it a little bit, but maybe I don't address it enough. So it was December, and now all of a sudden, I had a wake-up call, I think for a Penn State match or something. And then, so you have the rest of December, you got January, you got February, until the middle of March or toward the end of March. So, of course, we're going to straighten this out. But what I didn't really understand is it wasn't just that time period. That incident, it had been going on before. We were just that good. We had built a strong program, and it still carried us through some times where we weren't evolving to be a better team all the time, or continuing to put out, besides a good product, good people in terms of how they're acting, and it's not just the athletes; it's the coaching staff, or other people. It's just one of these things that all of a sudden, when I said I got worried in 86, December of 86, got worried a little bit. I thought it'd be easy, but it wasn't, because once we lost in March, now I really went down and started looking, and I saw where this had been going on for not just 4 or 5 months. It's been going on for 3 or 4 years. Not like, it's, I'm exaggerating, but only in reality I'm looking back and to see what we could have did different. And we could have done some things different. I could have stepped in. When you win that much, you just kind of enjoy the moment. And there's a lot of moments. And maybe I should have cracked down here, cracked down there. Maybe when I got a call from somebody and I maybe didn't take it as hard as I should have because we're being successful, because we're winning, because we got a great team. You know, it's just, you know, you got to be on top of something every minute. Otherwise, like you said, we had a 4-year break. We had a 4-year break where we didn't win. Of course, when we lost right away before I went back and I hadn't learned my lesson yet, I was changing, had a new era. That's by the poster. But, you know, I really didn't know the in-depth that how long it took to break down, how that would take that long to go get back up there. So, you know, 4 or 5 years of breakdown, and we're still winning, except for that 87 year. It took 4 years in between to get back up. I tell you, it's a great lesson. So, like, if you have some one little thing happen, I mean, you can overcome that. But all of a sudden, you look what happened over 4 years, and it wasn't going to just turn around. And so you had to rebuild. I mean, daily. It's a culture. It's called a culture. And so you had to rebuild it. And once we got it back built up, but we had to go to a couple things. We had to go to some people that were extremely. We had to go to some people that were extremely dedicated and really into this sport, attitude-wise, mentally-wise. And I think what really brought us back was 2 sets of twins, the Brands and the Steiners. I mean, when you had 40% of the lineup, what you needed, that was affecting a lot of different people. You know, and I think the Steiners brought back just that dedication. You know, I mean, when you take his Terry Steiner and he gets on a bike, and one of the things he did before he even came to college was he stayed up all night, wrote his Airdyne all night, just because he wanted to see if he could do it. So he went 7-8 hours on an Airdyne. I mean, wow. I mean, that's dedication. Then you look at the Brands and just how tough they were, and you know, they would go through the walls. And when I recruited them, you know, their walls were broke, you know, in their home. But you know, we needed some of that discipline. We needed some of that toughness. We had a lot of talent. We were doing well, but the coaching staff, which is me, it starts with me, and you know, I needed to be cracking the whip a little bit more. But yet, you know, I mean, it wasn't like, you know, we got second, you got third, maybe, I don't even know. And then, but one year we got 6th, I think. That was the lowest. The only time ever. Then we got running again, and we never put the foot off the gas. And if something came up from, like, the other era, I'd already learned it. You know, and that's the key. Not to make the same mistake twice. You don't want to, because you start winning again and win 5 or 6 in a row, you don't want to fall right back into the same thing you fell in before. You got to take care of it and not let it happen again. So anyway, that's kind of that. What was the second question?
Well, you answered it right there. You know, what did it take to get back on course? What went into putting things back on course? And you touched upon it there with, you know, the culture shift. And I'll let you expand on that if you want. But
well, I had to get off my butt and not just say I can bring everybody here. I don't care who they are, and I can make champions out of them. Well, I had to go out and say, I need this person, and I can't just let him go because I can't depend on him. So, you know, for me, it got me going on recruiting a little more, too. I actually went out in the world of recruiting and made more visits and made more telephone calls. And I used to think that it was just bring me anybody that's good, and our atmosphere will take care of that. But I didn't. But at that time, I had to realize there's a multi-facet type of work that you have to do, and so sometimes the head coach has to go out and do a little work to make sure that you show the commitment of that program to the kids and the parents.
Well, what you're getting at is interesting to me. I mean, there are a lot of high-profile athletes who said they, looking back, they really wanted to be Hawkeyes. You passed on some of them, and maybe got some guys who were considered quote, unquote, lesser recruits at the time, and turned them into champions. It's interesting. A guy, what comes to my mind right away is a guy that at one point lived down the road from you there in Iowa City, Bob Oldus, longtime Major League Baseball scout, and he said, his job would be a lot easier. He told me one time, my job as a Major League scout would be a lot easier if we could cut a guy open and see what he's made out of on the inside. From your vantage point, what did it take to trust your gut on some of these instincts and go with a guy that might not be as, an elite level of a recruit, but has maybe some of the characteristics that you're looking for in rebuilding this thing?
Well, I think, don't get me wrong, I still think we had to have a mix of that really good talent. But I think a lot of times that really good talent might not have that unbelievable discipline or unbelievable toughness, but they might have all the tools. And so it's like, guys that you had that were really talented, which you need some of that. They can actually kind of have an effect on the guys that are working really hard, just because they can look and see what they want to do in terms of execution, and in terms of skill, in terms of a good move, strategy, that type of thing. And then the guys that are really talented can look at some of these people that are there, that are maybe not quite as talented, but they rode the bike all night, and they go through the wall for you. And so I think it was the best teams, and the best way to recruit for me was, a mix of that athleticism, and of course you'd like to have a stamp that said this guy's the perfect wrestler, athletic wise, and he's got the perfect attitude. That usually didn't happen. So that's why I had two types of people usually in the room that was representing both, and both people could get things off from the other people to make them a little better, and then that helped our team. So, I don't know.
Looking back in recruiting the Brands brothers and the Steiners, are there some defining moments in those recruitments where you thought, all right, these guys have it? These guys have what I'm looking for here?
Well, I think the defining moment, and again, whether it be Steiners, the Brands, or Randy Lewis, when he came in, because he was highly recruited, he was highly a top recruit. But when they came in, they still didn't look like world beaters at the beginning. I don't think Steiners, I don't think the Brands. I just Randy Lewis. I mean, I really thought, Randy Lewis pinned 5 guys in a row in high school, 39, something like that, 45. I'm not sure what it was, but he would know exactly, and he should. But all of a sudden, he was working out with a guy in the room, maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 times, and I never saw him win the workout. And then he had to go against the guy in an early season tryout just to see how things were looking in matches. And I just going by workouts, I thought, he would probably get beat, but no, he didn't. He won the match, and it taught me as the coach. I was still fairly young yet, probably my first year as a head coach, but I was still running practice before that. But I still said, it's not really always just how they're performing in practice, as far as are they scoring and are they winning the practice. It's put them in under the lights, not looking at the lights, but put them in under competition, and And so I failed to kind of go back and see why he was he had all these statistics. You know, he pinned everybody, all these state championships. Well, he's a gamer, you know, Chris Campbell was a gamer like that. I mean, a lot of them are. In fact, both styles, you know, the styles that you came in that were just hard-working kids as compared to totally talented, you know, they both have to develop into gamers. But like Randy Lewis, you know, really I hadn't seen that, where he probably not had one practice against this guy. Maybe they went, you know, 5-6 times, and then in that 6-minute match, it didn't go 6 minutes. I don't think it probably, or the 7-minute match he probably pinned the guy in a couple 3 minutes or something like that. So it's just a matter of understanding philosophy. That's really crucial. You know, it's you know, and for me, it's like I get somebody sends me an email, and because they want me to do something, so they give me a template, and I go read it. I go read the template, and they give it to me to get me started, and they want me to, you know, kind of send this on or something like that. You know, if I just take that template and sign my name, and I might not even read it, but I will. But if I read it and I don't change it to where it's my philosophy, it's my writing, it's me, not somebody else, you know, it could go wrong. But it's one of these things that it's just not simple. You got to have a lot of proof. You know, so over all the years of being successful, you do have a lot of proof. But does that mean you're untouchable? No. Does that mean that you're taking care of business totally? No. Because it's really easy in life to take things for granted, especially when they're showing accolades. I mean, it can be the same way with being in marriage. I mean, all of a sudden something's slipping and you're not catching it, and if you haven't, and it could go too long and you're not going to catch it. But if you can catch it by early signings, early warnings, you know, that's a lot better. But sometimes it takes a long time. It's just like it took 9 championships. I'm not saying those first championships were built wrong, because they were built right. With Kurtelmeyer as the head coach, he had an outline. I helped him. He helped me. But I'm telling you, he did a lot of things really good, really good. And then when all of a sudden I became the head coach, and we still were doing really good things until a certain point. And then when that certain point comes, it's not always easy to understand. It's not easy to catch. And you don't think it's that big a deal. But then all of a sudden, that one point, if not corrected, leads to 2. That 2 leads to 3. And it's because it's going slowly, you're not seeing big signs of like, all of a sudden you're really good and then you're not very good. Or you're just not seeing those drop-offs. And if you did, you'd probably come back quicker. But you're not on top of it enough, and you think you can get by with something. You can't get by with anything. I mean, if my opponent, or if my athletes give their opponent one thing, then that's the start of 2. Pretty soon when they've got 10 things on you, they're beating you. You got to stop it from the beginning. And if it's not noticeable, then maybe the second thing. So, you know, Kurtelmeyer was a really good guy to learn under. Did a lot of really good things. And his management skills was so good for me, because right away he put me in charge of the wrestling room, which I guess I had been in charge of the wrestling room my whole life. I didn't really realize it, because I was the captain's, and everybody was watching the hardest working guy there, and so on and so forth. But for me, that was a great sign of leadership, which helped me unbelievably in my, in my process of becoming a better coach most of the time, and then making mistakes, and then after you make a pretty big mistake, you let it go for a long period of time. Then it's going to take quite a while to get back up there. But then when you let it get back up there, learn from before. Don't make the same mistake again. That's kind of like in marriage. It's kind of like with your kids. It's kind of like the whole story of life. And the better you do it, the more good things you're going to have happen, and less of a drop off, like a drop off. So that's kind of where I'm at on that. And I hate to say that I go back in my career as an athlete. That loss to Larry Owings. That loss to Larry Owings was a little bit like that 10th championship. Just not taking care of business that was needed, taken for granted. You've won 9 in a row, you're going to win 10. You've won 181 matches in a row, you're going to win 182nd. Yeah, you can't take any of that for granted. And it usually doesn't happen just right there at the competition site. Because when I broke the Owings loss down, it had been going on for a year. And when I broke the Gibbons loss down, it had been going on for 4 or 5 years. But obviously there were some things at the site of both Owings and Gibbons that also you weren't paying attention to. And that's called focus. But anyway, I don't know where we're at.
Well, let's talk 1983. That is one of the teams in the semifinals, and team that had 9 Big Ten champions. Bunch of legendary Hawkeyes in that lineup: Barry Davis, Jim Zaleski, the Bannock brothers. What did you appreciate most about that 1983 team? What are fond recollections of that squad?
Well, first of all, that was the year we moved into Carver, I believe. I mean, if you know that.
Yep.
You know that?
Yep.
How do you know that? You back following then? Huh?
Yeah. I mean,
how long were you following the Hawks?
Hey, I was at the 1980 NCAA championships in Corvallis. That was my first experience at the NCAA championships. I was 4 years old at the time. Dating myself a little bit here, but
we won that one, but there were some things going wrong at that championship. That's a whole different story too, and that was during the time period that we probably started a little bit craziness. But so that '83 team, what I remember most about that is, wow, close to perfection in that Big Ten tournament. First time ever in Carver. But a little bit reeling that year, just because. I mean, how do you wrestle in the field house and have all these great championships and great dual meets and have one more dual meet and you lose? And then you get to open up in Carver and you come back and you win. And so that win helped erase that loss that we had against Oklahoma State. The last dual meet, which was a crazy dual meet. But that first use of Carver Hawkeye Arena was pretty interesting because, I mean, having 9 guys win the Big Ten championship that year in Carver, I think that's the year, right?
Yeah. Yep.
9? How do you get 9 champions out of 10 weight classes? Well, I guess you can get 10. But a high school kid named Rico Chiapparelli came right out of high school, and he's the one that didn't win. He got 4th. So we had 9 firsts and a 4th. But my gosh, and I think Rico might have been able to win just with some adjustments, because I don't think he got beat too bad. I think he had some tough kids from, I think, Michigan. One of the brothers up there that wrestled, I think one of the brothers wrestled pro, or both of them wrestled pro, I think. But you know that that '83 team to win 9 first, and even how they won the 9 first, there was some pretty big wins to get. So we went 9 for 9. That's what we did. We went 9 for 9, and that's pretty tough to do in a Big Ten championship final. So that that '93 team was, or excuse me, that '83 team was pretty special. Pretty special. Is that right?
Yeah, well, let's flip it forward to that 91-92 era. We've talked about that a little bit here, but and some of the guys on that team. But what was the energy like in the room during that couple-year stretch? And as we mentioned, with the Brands brothers and the Steiners there, kind of leading the charge.
Well, it was definitely a relief to go to practice. And if you understand what I mean, because you got to realize I was going to practice with Rico and Royce, Randall, David Ray for a while until he transferred. I just had, and you had 2 Randalls. So, it's as compared to all of a sudden when you get things going a little bit better again in terms of discipline, being more appropriate all through your whole lifestyle. It was kind of a breath of fresh air getting things going. So, and I think I said this before. I mean, I used to go to bed during those middle '80s and worry about the phone calls I'd get in the middle of the night. Whether one of my wrestlers were calling me being goofy, or whether I had a phone call from a policeman or whoever. But when I started, it was kind of like back when we started to build the program. We had to kind of restart again. And I tell you, at 91, 90, 91, 92, that was, there wasn't perfect. You always had some individuals that you had to keep finding out why they weren't being as good as they should have been. I mean, Ryland was, I had to do some work with him for a while, even though he started out pretty good. He just, that confidence sometimes, Chelsvig, great guys, great guys, Ryland, Chelsvig, Pfizer, Olsendorf, these guys, but there was some issues that we had to, but they weren't the issues that I had with the craziness off the mat. This was more on the mat issues, maybe lack of confidence, maybe just whatever reason. It's as simple as readjusting somebody's mind to get them strong feelings about being successful. And that was like Olsendorf. As simple as getting him to focus on the mat instead of focusing on the football field where he wanted to be. And so he was we were playing second fiddle until he could get that out of his system. And once we got that out of his system, then he was what he could be and what he did end up being. So it wasn't that simple, but then you look at a guy like Pfizer, he was just a guy that was approaching him wrong, and I had to do some homework to figure out why I was approaching him wrong. I mean, just like in the end, my last career year in '97, I had to work on Tony Ursuline to get him to perform a lot better than he was performing. But you had to do a lot of homework. And that homework is something that a lot of coaches don't do. You don't call their folks up. You don't call their coach up. sometimes, but you need some help, and I needed some help. But I just knew things were going to go good because of 40% of the lineup were sets of twins, and then I had strikers in there, and that's brothers. So you had some really good family kids that were brought up, even though you might not think so sometimes when you watch them in the wrestling room, just because they weren't such. They nice guys off the mat mostly, but on the mat, they were terrors. And each guy was different, but those teams were. I was glad to get those middle 80s out of the way, even though I love the guys. It's just that I probably did them a little bit injustice. Could have gotten a little more out of them, maybe, but maybe not either. I don't know. Special people.
You mentioned Doug Stryker there, and 1992. You had 11 returning All-Americans. He was 6th in 1990, and then he's not even in your lineup in 1992. How did you keep him engaged? How did you keep him with the program?
Credit to the program. We wouldn't have kept him engaged back 5 years before that, because the program was back to being loyalty and more discipline. He was on board. He was so much on board that he's still doing it. He's a wrestling coach. So here's a guy that was an All-American that got knocked off the team. And he was the 11th All-American. That's the way it ended up, even though he wasn't at that time. But that's been his livelihood. That's the sound of doing a good job. And I really like that. When you brought that makes me feel good.
Yeah, and he's gone on to coach NCAA champions Matt McDonough, Jay Borschel. They're at Linn-Mar High School. The guy that took his place, Tom Ryan, comes in, transfers in from Syracuse. He's obviously gone on and done great things with his coaching career at Ohio State. But we've had a chance to have him tell the story of his first days at Iowa. What do you remember about Tom Ryan when he first came in?
Okay, now wait a minute. He took so Terry Steiner took his place, right?
Okay. I thought Tom told us the other day that he took Doug Stryker's. I could be mistaken.
No. It was Terry Steiner.
Okay.
That's right. But Tom Ryan, yeah, he's got a lot of stories. He tells them well. I didn't even know the guy was. I didn't know who he was. That's how lucky you get. He came to camp here as a kid, and I think maybe the two brands or one of them was his counselor at camp, wrestling camp, kind of his coach. I invite him up in groups. And he was so impressed that once he got to college and wasn't doing so well, he transferred here. And unbeknown to me, he had some friends already from summer wrestling camps. That was the brands. And then I guess when he came to practice, I don't remember exactly, but the first practice, I guess he got picked on, or he picked on one of the Steiners. And then I think he said they both alternated on him for a while, or he... I don't know what it was, but he said when he was done with that practice, he was questioning what the hell he was doing. So, but you don't have to, when you have the good. He came here, and because he came here, that was a good sign. He had what's going to keep him here. And thank God he came back to the second practice. Maybe he didn't pick on the Steiners then.
You look at some of the stories throughout your later years that are most familiar to me, and in terms of mentally priming somebody. And Jesse Whitmer talked in the past about losing to David Morgan like 8-1, and you're building on that escape point, and building his confidence. He says by the end of the conversation, he forgets the fact that he's lost the match because you've instilled so much confidence in him because of that. On the flip side, Ironside has told the story about beating Colot and the next day waiting in practice to hear what you've got to say about it. You give him an Ironside, nice job, you're on to the next guy. And he kind of read the subliminal messaging there that, all right, it's time to move on to the next task at hand. But as part of a larger point, how were you able to figure out which guys needed, you know, for lack of a better term, a kick in the butt, which guys needed a pat on the back? How were you able to decide which buttons to push? How did you know which buttons to push with guys individually?
Well, mostly it's because you're having so much success that you don't have to go and see 10 different people. You know, it's kind of like when you started originally. You know, but even when I started originally, when I first came to Iowa, I was shocked at the talent in the room. And I was so sure that they were going to win right away, the national title. But Kurtelmeyer, you know, he told me no, 5-year plan. But I told him, you know, I actually showed him some because it took 3 years. Actually, it only took 2 years to win the Big Ten. It took 3 years to win the Nationals. But I thought we were going to win it the first year. So, you know, I think everybody that's recruiting at this level has some good talent. And it's just hard to get them to perform. So when I was here, there was probably, you know, Jan Sanderson, Dan Holm, Dan Wagaman. You know, these guys were good, but they, you know, they weren't national champions. Danny Sherman, they might have been All-Americans, but I don't know if they were even high All-Americans. They might have been 4th, 5th. I don't even know what they were. I can't even remember. But, you know, the difference is getting them on board with your mentality, but finding out how to do that. And it takes a lot of homework. It takes a lot of understanding. It takes a lot of being able to point to somebody and having that somebody represent what you want. And if you don't have anybody to point to, then you got to be the point guy at yourself. Just your level of discipline and dedication, how hard you work. So, you know, it's like when practice is over, I mean, the coach just, you know, you can't just walk out of the room. If you expect your athletes to stay after and work after, you know, you got to have some, and if you want to walk out of the room, you better make sure you have another assistant coach or somebody everybody looks up to. But then again, you know, if you're the head coach, you got to put in more time and quality time than they do. You're outworking them. I mean, they got to be able to look up to that because, you know, they need something of loyalty, of really being genuine, and you know, I already had that going for me. What really was good was because at the end of practice, when I was first here at Iowa, was if I ran in practice, I usually didn't wrestle during practice, but then I wrestled after practice. And so that's when I think a guy named Bruce Kinseth really learned how to get really good, because he was the guy that had the stamina that could actually hold up after practice and still continue to work hard and give me a workout. But so he got an extra half hour of working out in, and probably got an extra half hour of some really good wrestling lessons. But you got to have somebody able to do that, and you don't want to keep people there to penalize them unless that's what they actually need. You know, so like you said, you got to know as a coach which guy you can let go, which guy you got to keep, and running extra sprints. It was amazing what I learned that first year of coaching. It's just amazing. And, I mean, I think it started right away when this is a story that's really a good story because, I mean, I'd only been there for a couple of weeks, and I've been at my high school was West Waterloo, and they were unbelievable. And then I went to Iowa State, and they were unbelievable. And then I came to Iowa, and I thought they were unbelievable until about the 4th day of practice, and I I've told this many times, but it was one of the security people came into the wrestling room and said, "Coach, we have to make an announcement." And I said, "What's the announcement?" He said, "Well, we got to tell people they can leave this building now if they want to. It's voluntary." And I go, "Why?" And they go, "Because there's a gas leak." And I said, "Well, we got to all get out of here." They go, "No, we got it under control. But we just have to tell everybody." That was the rules. And so I said, "Well, okay, tell them. They're not going to leave. Tell them if that's under control. I'm going to continue with my practice for another hour and 15 minutes. And we've only been into practice for, half hour. And so when this guy told the team, I think we had 10 freshmen that came in with me. The other 30 or 25 that had been there have been freshmen, or sophomores, juniors, seniors. They got up and left. And I'm yelling, "Guys, where are you going?" They said, "Coach, we got a chance to get out of practice." But I did have 10 guys there that stayed, and they worked out practice. But that's what Kurtelmeyer was telling me, at the beginning. It's just not that simple. Just because you got talent, you gotta be able to have that discipline and have that dedication and have that drive and that motivation. All that's got to be instilled. And he said it's going to take a little time. Well, I thought because they were talented, they had all that. But no, that's not the case. And that's where a lot of difference happens. And that's why those teams that came in with the Brands and the Steiners, and if we were, we had some great kids there, but they needed some of that type, So, I learned that quite early. And sometimes you lose it, but then you bring it back.
Let's go to your last season. Record-setting point total, 170 points at the NCAA Championships, 1997. One of the champions, one of your 5 champions, Lincoln McIlravy, wins his 3rd title. Rough second half of the season. He talked about the concussions and what he had to do to get himself ready to compete, and said he spent a lot of time in the pool. What kind of things did you do with him to get him mentally ready to compete in that tournament?
I'll tell you, it was not easy with him. Just like it wasn't easy when I brought him out of redshirt and had to battle some family and had to do some really good smarts. And we really had to do some things to change what he needed right then in a short amount of time on the beginning. So at the end there, I probably hadn't learned my lesson yet. And the lesson was, this guy's really good. And I still have to, and you know what, maybe it worked out. The way it worked out, maybe we were both right. Because he had an injury, a pretty serious injury, but not one that they said that, they said he could still go ahead and participate. So it was kind of a little unusual because, maybe back in those days too, they were a little bit behind the times, and maybe it's a different story right now. And basically a concussion. It's probably a lot of, maybe a lot of kids had concussions back in the old days. Nobody even knew it. But now they know it. And they got different rules now than they had back then. So, but he had a rule that, we had a rule that they cleared him. He could still go, but he felt he couldn't go. And so I struggled with that a little bit, and so I still wanted to bring him along. So there were some things that we did. We had him in the lineup, test him a little bit. It didn't look so good, and he didn't really want to go. But I felt like he needed to go. I asked him if it was the national finals, would you go, because you've been cleared. And he goes, "Yeah, I would." And it wasn't the national finals, but I said, well, I can capitalize on this because I can get him to think he's going to go, so prepare for the match, up till the match, and then not wrestling. But he didn't know that. He thought that I was going to make a last-second decision whether he was going to wrestle or not. I already made the decision, he wasn't going to wrestle in the national duels, no matter what any circumstance. But he didn't know that. But he just refused to go along with that. And so, you know what? I just said, okay. But I was kind of upset with it. But I thought about it for quite a while. And you know what? This guy's got a lot of credentials. He's got a lot of proof that he knows what he's doing. I mean, he's been in the state finals. I think he was 5-time champ and second, or I'm not exactly sure on this, but because I think Dakota, you can wrestle all when you're a 7th grader. So, and I think he was 10 pounds under weight class when he was a 7th grader when he got second or something like that. So, you know, I sometimes need to actually go back in time and look and see things like this. So really his senior year, I said, you know what? He knows more about it than I do. This guy's got talent. The best thing I can do for this guy is to get him healthy. Best thing I can do is to get him healthy. Let him go, you know, not train. Let him get some swims in. He's been wrestling all his life. And I actually have done this before, but you sometimes forget because you got a new guy maybe 10 years later, 15 years later, and you don't quite remember. But you've got to go back into your encyclopedia of knowledge and try to come out with the consistencies. And for him, yeah, the best thing for sure for Lincoln McElravy was not to wrestle through this, was to get somewhat healthy. And by the time the Nationals came, you know, he had to go into overtime to win, but that's in the finals. He was, you know, he knew what he was doing. A lot more than I had initially thought. So it's got to go two ways. When somebody has a proven track record, I'll tell you what, use it. When they're not so proven, you can step in and be a little more authoritative, or you kind of telling him what to do. But at this level, Lincoln McElravy was pretty much under control. Taught me a lot about coaching.
As we mentioned, we're doing this for the Dynasty Duels, and one of the incredible pairings that we have in fantasy land here is Barry Davis on the 83 team against Terry Brands on the 1991 team. You got to see that play out in real life in the practice room when Barry's career was winding down. Terry's was just getting started with the Hawkeyes. What did you appreciate about those battles? And a sidebar question to that, we've seen a lineage of Hawkeye lightweights that started, you know, with those guys kind of passing the torch, and, you know, Tom, of course, being in there, Ironside, and so on and so forth. We've seen 40 years of strong Iowa lightweights. How have you gotten guys to not just take care of their own business, but also pass it down from, you know, generation to generation of Iowa wrestlers?
I just think that once you get something going, that you know how to keep it going. And you make some mistakes, but there's qualities that these kids have that are a lot of similarities, but then there's some little differences. And those, you can't just stamp them out. And those little differences are the edges that they're going to have in their wrestling. What's kind of interesting in these duels for me is it's kind of hard to have somebody automatically be a winner just because he's got so many credentials. He went all the way and won the Worlds, or went all the way and won the Olympics. But you got to look in time where they were at this particular time. So each one of them are a little. So you take Barry Davis at his highest level, and you take Terry Brands at his highest level. I mean, that's a matchup. You know, I mean, but if you look and see what team they were on, they might not be the same guy yet. So the fans vote on these. Who's going to win? They're probably thinking about, oh my gosh, you know, he's got to win. This guy's got to win because He's did all this in his career. He won 2 world titles. He's a bronze medalist in the Olympics. He's got 2 national titles. Terry Brands. But then you look in the lineup, and what year was Terry Brands on that team? You said he was sophomore, maybe, or
that would have been his junior year. Yeah.
Junior year. Yeah, and so you got to kind of look, and then you look at when Barry was, what year he was. So for me, it's hard to just say automatically this guy could win unless you just look at the total package, and that's what most people are doing. Because there's vulnerabilities in everybody on all of these lineups, all 4 teams at one time. But then there's strengths that are unbelievable too, once you got them there. And so it kind of depends on what time of their life they were at, really, on who would win this. Because if they were struggling, like I told you earlier, Mark Ryland, he was unbelievable in the national finals in 91 and in those national tournaments. But if I go back a few years and I can remember, I was trying to pull everything out of the hat just to get him to beat anybody in a practice room at one point in time, just maybe over a short period of time, maybe a few weeks. Just because people get up, they get down, they're not who they could be, or they're having issues. Could be girlfriend, could be studies, could be you lost 3 matches in a row. But I remember those times. And so, there's some, even though there's some obvious decisions who's going to win here, they're not that obvious. They're all vulnerable at one time. Like I said, Travis Fizer, Bart Chelsby, Ryland. I look right on this 191 team here. Tom Ryan. There's always Chad Zapito. These guys are great wrestlers. The heavyweight Ostendorf. Like I said, Ostendorf was he had 2 really good years in him. He should have had 4 really good years. And I shouldn't say really good because he could, it wasn't like he won the Nationals, but they were good. But something had to be solved and had to be, if I put Ryland out there without working on what he needed to conquer, and you see it's conquered. Like I said, Tony Ursuline. I can just, I can think about these things. Tom Brands. I can remember Tom Brands coming into my office, and me and him kind of got into it, going into his senior year a little bit. I believe it was his senior year. And if you don't address these issues individually, you're not going to have a team as good as you can be. You're going to have more holes because you're not going to address what you need to address. You got to address the issues on every guy, and not every guy has issues all the time. And thank God. If I was a coach and I had every guy had an issue, oh man, that's tough. I've been there. I think when they first got to Iowa, I think I told you that the only guys that didn't really have issues were the freshmen that came in with me. So the other 25, I think, had issues. But yet, they were good people. They just had a different mindset, different culture. And as much as I shook my head on Danny Sherman that whole year, when first year assistant coach, and he was a senior, 4th year senior, 5th year senior, I don't know, Danny Sherman out of Illinois, he won the Nationals. I stayed with him. I don't know if he stayed with me, but he had to listen to me every day. I wouldn't let up. And I didn't see a whole lot of what I wanted to see, but I did at the end. So it paid off. Paid off for me. Paid off for him. Deerfield, Illinois.
Well, hey, this has been awesome. The Dynasty Duels have been a lot of fun, reflecting on this era of Iowa wrestling, the 80s and 90s. Lots of great teams during your tenure that we've got a chance to dive into and really do some retrospective coverage of. It's been fun visiting with you here. Anything else you want to add from any of those eras that come to your mind?
I think it's unbelievable. And again, I don't really know how these came together, and I think it's votes. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's all 100% fan votes to determine this thing.
Yeah, so it's really a lot of fun, I think, for those people. But again, I think it's a one-sided vote because you're just looking at one name as compared to the other. You got a set of credentials as compared to and you're not looking at their highs and their lows, and you're not looking at the exact time when they were in the lineup. So there's a lot of factors that you could really go into this at that moment. And I don't think you could, you seeded them, right?
Yeah, they're seeded based off the fan vote.
But aren't these four teams that are in the semifinals, what's their seeds here?
Let's see. The 97 team was the 1. 91 was the 10 seed. I think 92 might have been the 12. And 83, I think, was the 6.
Saying? You got 10 seeds, you got 12 seeds, you got number 6 seeds, and they're all in the top 4. I mean, that's a little bit inconsistency here. Somebody messed up. And the reason why is because this is a tough thing to really do.
Been some incredible teams in the last 40 years.
Yeah, I know that. But it just so happens if you catch one of these teams in the wrong time, they're a lot better than another time. But there's some big names on there, and if you look at those lineups, it's scary. It's scary. But let me tell you one more thing that's really unbelievable, and I can't remember exactly when it was. Whenever our fans, because this is fan-based, our fans in the finals of the national duels in Lincoln, Nebraska, boy, we had won a ton of duel meets. We had won the probably 91, 92, 93. And we were winning the national titles again. We had won, 38 duels in a row or something. 2 years. I don't think we'd had too many close ones. Something like that. And we go to Lincoln, Nebraska, and we get upset by the University of Nebraska in the finals. And it was kind of funny I remember during the finals, because we had a lot of fans there, and Nebraska had quite a few fans, but they made the finals. But, Nebraska, at that time, really wasn't, maybe the duel that people would anticipate to be the great duel. But it was a great duel, and there was excitement. Our fans had to yell the whole time. And when we got done, we got beat. And right away, I'm upset. I'm upset. As I'm walking out of the arena, a bunch of our fans were still there. And they look down, they go, "Hey, Coach." I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Don't feel so bad." I go, "Well, I'm pretty upset. We had some matches that really guys didn't come through." He goes, "Yeah, but wow, we needed this." I go, "The team? No, the fans. We needed some excitement. We've been handling all these teams. We haven't had a good duel meet in a long time. And even in a loss, it was a great duel meet. It was a great duel meet." That's wow, that kind of shocked me. Of course, we came back that year and won the Nationals, whatever year that was. But so sometimes that entertainment end, that excitement that you're putting out there in a competition against competition, pretty healthy, pretty healthy. And it kind of taught me something there. It's just not about winning. Sometimes it's what's taken place during that win, just how good of a competition it was. So, even though I'm kind of, well, I'd like to go back and see how we could have won that match. We could have. But at the same time, hey, you got to think beyond the box, out of the box a little bit. And I actually gave the fans on both sides an unbelievable dual meet. It's good for the sport.
Well, hey, great stuff. Greatly appreciate you taking the time to reflect on some of your great teams, and really enjoyed it. Thanks much, Coach. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I look at this, and how do you beat, like, a Banning? How do you beat a Brands? Especially against your own guy. I mean, it's kind of one-sided a little bit.
So
because it's voted.
What are we going to do if it's 91 versus 92 in the finals, and you got the same 10 guys going head to head? What's your solution there? What's that?
The perfect is, I think you have to do draws.
Yeah.
On who's on which team. Because it don't matter. That's probably what you have to do. You have to draw 5 guys on each team and have 5 dual meets or 5 matches. And see who wins. But yeah, I think that might be it. I mean, I think you might have to do that, don't you?
We'll see.
Might have to do that.
We'll see. We may end up with 83 in there against one of them.
When's the voting come in?
Finishes up Saturday evening for the second semifinal, and then we got the finals beginning Saturday night.
What do you think the fans want to see?
I don't know. I'm intrigued to see who wins the Barry Davis-Terry Brands vote. Really intrigued to see that one.
And again, now this is Barry Davis, and do they look, is there anything that they look at the time of these guys, where they were? I mean, it's get in depth.
It's what, like, we lay out all the information. It's whoever wants to, whatever criteria you want to use, whether it's career achievement.
Are they looking later on what happened after this match?
Some might.
I mean, are they looking
probably
like the Olympic and all that stuff?
Some people probably will be. Hey, it's whatever you want. It's whatever.
Though is kind of look and see how good they were exactly at that time in their career. I guess. I don't know. It's pretty interesting stuff. But I'll tell you one thing. Just because the fans are voting for one side and going to determine the winner, you got 2 guys at each weight that are not going to accept losing the match. Or something similar. They're so competitive. They're going to be upset in most of the weight classes. And they're going to maybe come back and tell you how they could have won. Because there's no losers here.
Well, hey, it's been a lot of fun. Thanks much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.